Awesome. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Big Joel Show. Pretty excited today. I've got Daniel Lippman in the studio from Politico. He looks pretty excited. He just got his hair done and everything. He's all excited. And I'm excited. I'm excited to talk to Daniel. Obviously, everyone knows that's watching this. I am the author of the little book on big ego. And Daniel, I'm sure ego never comes into play with anything political, right? I mean,
it's the first time I've heard of it.
So. It's the first time I've heard of it. Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to read the book and figure out what this ego thing is.
Yeah, exactly. So Daniel says, how long is this? And I said, like 19 years, 4 hours. I mean, we could be talking about this subject forever. And so I wanted to Daniel, start. I want to make sure I get this right. White House reporter for Politico and co-author of Politico's playbook. If you're watching this and you've heard the term Politico, which I know everyone has, you've seen the playbook. So I got the guy in the studio here that co-authored that thing. While I was sitting here meeting Daniel for the first time, I think his whole face was in his phone checking his feed. And so I said, how many hours a week are you working? Like 900 hours a week to stay on top of everything. He said, it's a little bit less than that. But Daniel, give me a little background on you. Josh told me a great story, by the way, before you came in. Josh Brown's the producer of the Big Joel Show. He told me a great story about when you guys were, I don't know whether you were in high school, about how you used to carry around newspaper clippings everywhere and then send notes to the people that wrote the article, kind of like gotcha notes, like, hey, by the way, this is factually wrong.
Yeah. So
is that a true story?
That is true. Josh is not lying. When I was in high school and college, I would read a lot of news online and in print, and I would often see typos or errors in stories. And so I would email the reporter or the editor of the piece and gently tell them that they should fix this or change that. And so that got me, a lot of people didn't reply, but the people who did were mostly grateful because there was someone who was reading as closely as I was to try to make their stories better. And so that led to me to get profiled by Politico a long time, way before I joined Politico. I was a power player of the week on Fox News Sunday.
How old were you?
I was 19, 20 years old.
That is phenomenal. So you were at GW and you graduated from the youngster catching people to the expert.
And I think Politico figured that we should just hire this guy instead of him emailing all of our reporters. I had tried very hard to get hired by the AP or Reuters, but when you're a person who has all these internships, it's a tough journalism job market out there.
Yeah, that's amazing. So that's a great story unto itself. So this is a guy that took something he was passionate about, which is, by the way, catching people doing something wrong. Sorry, that's tongue in cheek. Took something he was passionate about, which is news and being accurate.
Yeah.
And literally jump-started it right into a career, probably a career that you wanted to be in. It's such a cool story. I was laughing. I was imagining when Josh was telling me, I was imagining you walking around kind of like who's the Peanuts character with the stuff flying everywhere, just papers, everywhere, combing through the papers. Did you read the paper at, for me when I was growing up, my dad used to have us read the front page of the Washington Post. I'm from DC, and we talk about something, at dinner. Yeah. Did you come from one of those houses where you're just nosing a newspaper?
We didn't like talk about specific articles as much, but we were just talking all the time about what was going on in current events. And so my family was, civically minded. And so it was a lot of local news. But when I was growing up, it was the Bush administration that I remember the first term, at least before I went to high school. And so we were talking about 9/11 and the Iraq War. And so that all got me interested and curious about the world since I grew up in a town of 7,000 people. And so I wanted to explore outside of that town exactly in terms of there's a whole wide world out there that I wanted to be a part of.
That is the Berkshires in far western Massachusetts, right? As far as you can go in Massachusetts. Yeah.
A lot of people, when when you say I'm from Massachusetts, they say, "Oh, you're from Boston." I'm like,
of course,
no, I haven't been to Boston in a long time.
Right.
There's Mitt Romney would not visit our state very much, or not visit the Berkshires, Western Massachusetts, when he was governor, and so a lot of people held that against him, because if he was he should have represented the whole state instead of focusing on Boston and that part of the state.
Yeah. So let's talk just about the current political climate right now. I know that's just such the big, broadest statement ever. This morning, when Daniel was having his hair did in the studio here, he said, "Oh, I was on BBC this morning." I said, "Oh, where'd you shoot that?" He said, "They wanted me in 10 minutes from my house." I said, "What was that about?" He said, "Well, of course, what do you think? Mueller's statement and Trump." But what, staying as nonpartisan as we can, what's the talk to me about, you're just in it all day, every day.
Yeah. So I guess the big news these days is 2020 is ramping up, and you're seeing Trump start to lash out against some of the Democrats who are trying to challenge him. And what got a lot of people's attention in the last couple of days was how Trump basically agreed with Kim Jong-un, the North Korean dictator, who described Joe Biden as low IQ. And he said, well...
Sorry, I have to laugh at that, but go ahead, keep going.
Kim Jong-un said he was a low IQ idiot, I think, and Trump said, well, I was much kinder to Joe Biden. I called him a low IQ individual. Yeah. And so my colleague with Andrew Restuccia and I, he was the lead reporter. I just contributed a little bit. He wrote a story about how this is one of Trump's favorite insults, calling someone low IQ. And so he's used that against Mika Brzezinski and Supreme Court justices and everyone under the sun that he views as someone who is not very smart. And he has said that Lockheed Martin CEO Marilyn Houston and Tim Cook, the Apple CEO, they are high IQ people. He's praised them to his White House aides. But this is a very retro compliment, or even indicator of IQ is something that was in the 80s and 70s. Most people don't take IQ tests anymore. There's a much broader range of intelligence, but Trump is someone who's in his early 70s, and so he thinks in terms of, well, you can measure intelligence just by that number 2 pencil and you fill out a form. But he's never actually released his own IQ. We actually asked the White House for it. And he refused to.
Politico did?
Yeah, yesterday, of course.
That's awesome.
If we were going to do this story, we had to ask.
Right.
And so, especially since, Trump once, he tweeted, I think it must have been 6 years ago, that he had, he had a very high IQ. And so a Twitter critic said, so what was the actual number? And he said, the highest, dumbass. And so... that was kind of a fun, we unearthed that tweet. And he used to criticize Obama for not releasing his grades and when he won't do the same. And so it's been interesting to watch how he loves to kind of view his staff as it's like a Hunger Games type Game of Thrones, where he's constantly pitting them against each other. And IQ is one way that he does that with a broad range of people.
Now, what obviously 2020 is coming up. There's a bazillion Democrats who have their hats in the ring. What one of the things a lot of people talking about us lay people, not as Politico people, is what we call, and maybe it's not, but the Schultz Factor. What are your thoughts on that? Is it do you believe that if he fully comes in under an independent flag, that he really causes problems for the Democrats in 2020?
Oh, we've heard that he actually doesn't want to play a spoiler role, where if he entered the race, that he would guarantee Trump's reelection, and so that's not something that he wants to do. He wants Trump to get out of office. But a lot of Democrats really do not like Schultz because they view him as someone who is this
libertarian-ish,
and someone who is obsessed with his own ego, for example, that he thinks that he alone can save the republic, when he has these policies that he hasn't really articulated why he should be the standard bearer. And if he really believes in this stuff, why doesn't he run as a Democrat and try to get Democrats and independents to vote for him there to win the primary and not have this kind of as a ego trip for him?
Spoiler.
Yeah.
Sort of. Do you think he's going to run?
I don't think he's going to run because he will look at the polling and say that whoever the Democrat is, I could hurt him without actually having a real chance of winning. If Schultz was ahead in the polls of Trump or even close to him, or Joe Biden or whoever the Democrat is, fine, then Democrats would be, wouldn't care if he was elected. But given that it's not like Bernie Sanders is the front runner right now. He is a front runner in the Democratic primary. But even with a Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren, Democrats still don't want Schultz to run because they would either stay at home or they would bite the bullet and vote for Sanders or Elizabeth.
Yeah. I think it's if nothing, it's going to be very interesting. You're going to have a nice little ride here for the next year and a half or a couple of years. What so obviously, I mean, Biden is obviously the front runner, right? So that's why it's incredible that it's newsworthy, the IQ stuff. What do you how do you feel about the common lore that the economy rules? Meaning, if the economy is humming and kicking, it doesn't really matter what the sitting president does. They're probably going to get another 4.
Well, that's usually the case, but this is not a usual president, and so Trump could be the person, the kind of the exception that proves the rule, where usually if you have such a great economy, then you're almost guaranteed re-election. But Trump is way behind in these polls, and the economy is doing great now. And so I don't see, and if you look at the economic models, most of them show that Trump is going to win, but those models were off last time when they predicted that he would lose. And so it's kind of the reverse here, that he has made so many controversial remarks and he's turned off a number of different independent and demographic groups in terms of women, suburbanites who say that they're kind of tired of the chaos of Washington that Trump has kindled. And so even though their pocketbooks might be doing fine, that doesn't mean that they think that the country wants another,
I think
4 years of Trump.
And I think that I think Nancy Pelosi, again, this is nonpartisan here. It doesn't matter what you think of it, or I think she's wise to try to shut down all the impeachment mongers, because it's one thing that is factual. If the country has to go through that, the Republicans, I think, he's getting another 4, because they're going to be just disgusted by, just the American public in general to get dragged all the way through that again. So
not an easy. This is a process that takes months, many months.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not like the House impeaches in 1 week and then the Senate does the next week.
Yeah.
You only have one Republican, Justin Amash, the Libertarian congressman from Michigan, who supports impeachment. And so Democrats do not want to have a failed impeachment bid that really takes down their presidential nominee. And so that's why you have people like Joe Biden, who is not supporting impeachment at this moment.
Interesting. So how about regarding, just for a big part of my audience, what's going on politically just regarding real estate finance, mortgage? I know you just spoke at NAR. You just did a Q&A. Yeah. Share a little bit about that with us.
So I have a limited visibility in terms of, I don't cover the real estate business on a daily basis. But so I spoke in a Q&A with Shannon McGann, who is the head of government relations for the National Association of Realtors, kind of giving a flavor of Washington for that group. They meet a bunch of times a year, but this was their semi-annual meeting at a hotel in D.C. And in terms of the real estate market, I think it's interesting. The one political piece I think is how you're seeing some of those Trump properties not do as well in terms of their revenue that given that he's president, that there's a lot of American consumers out there who they don't like the president, and so they're not going to go to the Trump hotel, or they're not going to stay at a.
So his real estate brand has suffered.
Yeah, among certain of his properties, that they've had to take down his name on the Trump name on a couple different properties, including one in New York and I think one in Central America. And so if you're a person who is a Democrat or just a libertarian or independent that doesn't like Trump, then you probably would have stayed away, but you're definitely staying away from Trump properties now. But he has seen his D.C. properties doing very well. A lot of foreign interests and companies and industry groups, they like to go there, patronize that as kind of a show of support for the president.
Now, what about this whole? This is a hot button thing that I've noticed has gotten shut down pretty effectively lately.
Okay.
It got quiet. You tell me if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. But the S word, it's a bad word. It's not the F word, the S word, and that socialism. That is a scary word that I personally think, and I'm just a guy, that I think people will sit at dinner, bash, say they won't, and go right in that booth and hit the button. Meaning they will lie and say they didn't and go right in there and vote.
They would vote for the
socialist? No. They would vote for the current president. They would lie and say they didn't, and they would go right in and hit the button, which is, I think, what happened last time, to be honest. Yeah. I think people were like, and they went right in and went, bink! Went right in and hit. They said, you know what, I don't care about this. I don't care about that. I don't care about this. This is the stuff I really care about, and I'm scared to, death of what's going to happen. Now we're talking new, 2020, whatever, and there's so much. It's up. I think in general, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, it doesn't even matter. I think the way they're spinning it, the way they're spinning the whole socialism. I guess just a socialism spin. Have you noticed that it just got it got completely shut down?
We don't hear as much talk of it as
because
before.
The Democrats smartly shut that down at 100 miles an hour.
But we should still remember that AOC and Bernie Sanders, they're still technically socialists. And so we actually have seen, if you look at the polls, more Americans support socialism than ever before. It's growing. So I think it's like 40%
what's the number?
It's 40% of at least young people who, or maybe even of all Americans who say that socialist ideas are good. And I think that's up significantly. I think the Trump factor and just the economic tumult in the last 10 years until this current upswing has put more people in that camp. Where
but does Venezuela kibosh a lot of that? If you educated and you really read.
I think it's not just Venezuela. There's so many other examples where socialism has not worked.
That's just a current in the news, in your face thing, right?
I think that's true. Where, but I don't think the country would not die if Bernie Sanders was president, because he would still have a Congress that would block and the courts
100%.
would. And so but there's a reason that Democrats want us. It's much harder to accuse someone like Joe Biden or Beto O'Rourke or Kamala Harris of being a socialist. And even if Republicans, they always accused every Democrat of being one. And so,
right.
But it would stick much less accurately to them if it was more of a centrist Democrat.
So, do you agree that it's gotten quiet?
Yeah, I think they knew that this is not a good brand to be associated with.
Yeah, you could say. And Biden is way ahead of Sanders, correct, in the polls? Or but just ahead?
He's significantly ahead. But we should remember that it's so early. And Jeb Bush was way ahead in 4 years ago and on the Republican field. And Hillary Clinton was ahead in the general election for most of her entire race. And so... And look what happened. They both lost.
Do you think are all hats in the ring at this point?
Yeah, I don't see anyone else who is remaining that could declare. I think the last one was Bill de Blasio, who had one of the worst campaign rollouts ever.
Just your short list of true contenders. Who do you think can really contend in 2020, assuming Trump's running again and has the nomination? Who are the Democrat? Who are your short list of contenders that can win? That you think could win
Against Trump?
Yeah,
I think Biden could win. Beto could win. Buttigieg could win. Kamala could win. The others, I'm sure many of them could win, but they're just less well known, and so they actually haven't done the polling on every. Could John Hickenlooper win in all these different states? But he would just be less. Some of the contenders are much less charismatic, and so they're much less well known to Americans, and so they would have to introduce themselves.
Spend a lot of money,
big time,
a lot of money. Yeah. Yeah, you got to get the party completely behind them, right? To contend with that, because it's interesting. I think from a lay perspective, I think that Trump went to school on Obama as far as social media, for data. I think he went to school. I think Obama's a genius with data. Getting elected, and I think Trump's team went to school on that and used that. Some of the greatest quotes, from his campaign of, people saying, "Hey, we were going door to door. We know people were, it didn't matter what the polls said. They were telling us, we knew, we were out there and we knew." And obviously the next person is, it's probably a little more even playing field. Everyone is just data. And talk about a little bit of 2020, just the whole social media piece, the whole platform piece. What have you heard? What's going to be drastically changing there, if anything? What is Facebook, obviously the biggest player, or Twitter, or I'm sure you could go on forever on this. Obviously, all the arguments are being made that they should be regulated like a utility, so someone can keep an eye on them. Because really no one's keeping an eye on them right now. But
of course,
how do you think they're going to affect 2020?
So the 2 points that I would make is that Facebook, especially in the last couple of days, has gotten so much criticism for keeping that fake Pelosi video on its site of her slurring her speech. And so she criticized them just yesterday, in fact. And it's remarkable that Facebook has said, we're happy to just keep this on our site and not actually take it down, given that it's completely false. It's a doctored video. And so Facebook is still having to contend with how to regulate itself. And so that's why a lot of Democrats and even Republicans are saying Facebook should be better regulated, given that they seem to not always...
Both camps. They're in agreement on that one.
So we're going to get more regulation, given that you don't usually see Democrats and Republicans agreeing on that. And so in terms of social media in 2020, Hillary made a big mistake last time where they didn't actually embed. Facebook gives you an option of they will put employees of the companies inside the campaign to help them, manage the algorithms and, target their ads properly. And Trump was happy to take that help, but Hillary Clinton wanted to do it herself, or her team did. So they chose not to do that. But I think whoever the Democratic nominee is or will be, will select that option, because it's very foolish not to accept Facebook's help when this is where most of the battle is fought on social media.
So do you think we're going to have the same climate? It still won't be even remotely fixed regarding what are the stats? You probably know the numbers. The percentage of people that get their news from Facebook, it's massive number, right? And then the percentage of news that's fake on Facebook.
So it's hard to tell the exact percentage that's fake, because there's no, it's not like a Gallup survey.
Right.
And in terms of the percentage of, I don't have the number offhand, but obviously I would encourage you, even if you get a lot of news on Facebook, there's still a reason why traditional media outlets like the New York Times, Washington Post, Politico, they exist. And so, a lot of companies worry that Facebook will, cannibalize their industry in terms of taking all the ad money and taking the eyeballs away from those sites. And so you have seen big media do very well under Trump and get many more subscribers and much more revenue and profit. But that doesn't mean that the trends long term are still worrying, and that you have to figure out a way to be essential in terms of getting people to pay for your content. That's the name of the game. Paywalls and subscriptions. And I think the next wave will be local newspapers, which have been already hard hit, but you're going to see a lot of them start to fold in the next couple of years or sharply reduce what they actually do. And
only be online, right?
Yeah, or just be a shell of their self or just shut down in overall because the money will not support them surviving in their current form. So you're already seeing some nonprofit news organizations try to pick up the slack in these states, which is great, but it doesn't supplant the investigative watchdog reporting that local newspapers were doing in their state capitals.
Interesting. That's very interesting. Do you think we're going to have a year of our social media feeds filled with stuff that we're going to try to figure out whether it's true or not? Or are they going to regulate it a little bit more? Can they even regulate it anymore?
They have more people who are looking at the stuff to try to stamp out the content that is not true or libelous or slanderous. But it's such a long-running battle because people will put up that stuff all day long, and so Facebook does not have enough people to find all the stuff that needs to be excised. And you still want free speech, and so if something is controversial, that doesn't mean that you should shut it down.
I was telling you before we went on air that I had Andrew Schultz on here from CSIS, and he was talking about a second book that he was writing, and the book was actually I think Josh probably remembers the term. I forget the term, but it was about fake news actually creating some type of world event that would be bad, meaning because you can do anything. I mean, you can literally make it look. I mean, you can take anyone's deep fakes. Yeah, deep fakes. Taking anyone's image. I mean, you could take, you could walk, home to your girlfriend who's just saying, hey, I just watched this. You were here. I was not there. That was not me. That's you. Are you kidding? That is definitely you. That's your voice. That's your, everything. That was not me. Yeah. Right? And it wasn't you.
But there's sci-fi, or I think there was in Homeland or some of the shows that have had themes of this. But this is such a worrying issue that I would hope that the government is trying to figure out a way to.
And when you think about, that's a major thing, like creating a nuclear war or something. I mean, something crazy over fake news, but or deep fakes. But when I think about election coming up and sort of where we are with social media and where we are with everything, and I'm just thinking, oh man, this is just going to be a bonanza of just fake stuff. And how quick can they put it up? And then who cares? Who cares? It's like in court, right? When the attorney says something and the judge says strike that and the jury heard it. Strike what? Yeah, they struck it from the record, but they remember hearing it. You just blurted it out. What is the normal consumer? What am I just going to get belted with? It's going to be heavy, right?
Yeah, I think it's that. It's hard to correct a first impression, and so that's what you're already starting to see with the Pelosi video I mentioned, where it's something that looks real and looked plausible, but is creating a false impression about many people.
What was their reason for leaving it up for that long? Did they just go quiet, or?
I don't remember exactly what they said, but they just said that that's our decision.
Free speech. Sorry.
That they're not going to take everything down, and so they're going to keep stuff that's creatively mischaracterizing how people actually are,
without any disclosure. Says it's fake.
We'd have to look at the exact video and see. Yeah. But I think that Facebook, that was a big mistake for them, and it would be interesting to see if Mark Zuckerberg, the next time he does one of those interviews on stage at one of those conferences, whether he admits that they messed up here.
Yeah. And I don't know. It's just such a big. Tell me a little bit about, you see my book there, the little book on big ego. Do you think it just drives everything? Is just every interview you do? I mean, you interview obviously a lot of cool people, a lot of interesting people. Do you find a common theme there with a lot of them, that it's driven that way?
I think that people in government and in the private sector, they want to get proper credit for what they do, and so they want to kind of brag through journalism and reporters about what they're actually doing. And there's a whole industry of PR people whose job is to get press for their clients. And so having to deal with them all day long, lots of requests and pitches of people wanting to be in Playbook and wanting to be covered by Politico or not covered. And
not covered.
Yeah, that's a rare
Don't
thing.
cover this, please. Yeah, exactly.
But it still happens.
Does that hit you all day? Is that hitting you literally all day?
That's just
someone on your
constant
team?
emails to me and people in our team. And so the reason sources talk to you, anonymous background sources talk to you, is often because their ego is driving them to leak stuff to me or to tip me off to a story. And so sources always have motivations, and one of them is ego. Oftentimes it's linked to, I think the public deserves to know this, but sometimes people want to make their colleagues or their enemies or rivals look bad or themselves look good, and so that's why they will talk in the media and through me.
Yeah, I was telling Dan before as we wrap this up. I published my book, The Little Book on Big Ego, in 2006. And for those of you that were around then or old enough to consume news, you'll remember that the current president right now, President Trump, was going at it with Rosie O'Donnell. And I even forget what they were going at it over, but I mean, it was just crazy.
They hated each other.
But there was something, it was, I don't know what spurred it, or maybe it was nothing, but it was just the two of them just going at it. And we were watching it like, are you really? Is this really going on? And they were faxing each other stuff. It wasn't like just email. They were faxing notes to each other. And at the time, you could go on my website and you could order the book and you could mail it to anyone you wanted anonymously. And it was really funny to see how many books President Trump got. Well, he wasn't President Trump. Mr. Trump got, and Rosie got. It was it was pretty even up. And
did you hand deliver them yourself to Trump Tower? Or?
Yeah, exactly, with a bulletproof vest on. Exactly. No, they just got mailed. We had a way to just mail them anonymously, and they would just show up, in a stack, and they couldn't track it.
Now you have to send them to the White House.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know if I want to be tweeted about. If
I've been tweeted about negatively by Trump. So.
You got your name in a tweet?
Not my name, but stories I've done. He is slammed Politico and the multiple times for stuff that I've been a hand of.
Yeah, but you guys don't get the CNN treatment. I mean, Politico does not get the CNN treatment. You guys are, you shouldn't. If you do, you clearly shouldn't. I've been reading and consuming Politico for a long time. I've always thought it's, just interesting. I never thought it was like, a slam job, either way. I thought it was pretty, okay, here's what happened.
Oh, yeah, we try to be just very down the middle, and we're not biased or leaning one way or another. So that just helps us maintain credibility with our audience. And
it's funny. I've told some of my daughter who just graduated from high school. I've told some of her friends. My daughter's always loath or scared to have any of her friends in a car with me or near me because I'll start talking to them about something. And some of them either have extremely liberal parents or extremely conservative parents, and I'll always start asking them questions what they think about. And then I'll say, well, did you know? And then I'll start going into facts, just straight facts. And they'll be like, wait, what? Wait, what? Well, how would I know that? And I was like, listen, unfortunately, you have to consume a lot and you have to get good at extrapolating because there's no, go ahead and read CNN and then go watch Fox and then read the BBC and then read Politico. You have to, and then kind of for yourself on your own, try to figure it out. And they kind of look at me incredulously. They're like, well, that's not right. What do you mean? I'm like, yeah, that's how it works. Everybody is slanting, one way or the other. But you guys, that's why I was excited. Josh said, hey, I want to get my friend Daniel to come on. I was like, cool, Politico, cool. I love Politico. Tell me what's coming down the pipe for Politico. What are you guys into that's new, fun, cool? Talk to me about that a little bit as we wrap up.
For the last 4 or 5 years, we've had Politico Europe, which has been a big success. So we have a team covering the European elections and Brexit, and we have...
Now you don't sleep at all?
There's people there.
Okay, all right.
London
They're not looking for you.
Brussels.
Okay, good.
I don't need to do much for them.
Yeah.
But we have Politico Canada, so we are covering Canada more. Politico in the States, in New York and New Jersey and Florida and California, and the list goes on. And we have a new partnership, relatively new, with the South China Morning Post, which is the best newspaper in Asia, daily newspaper based in Hong Kong. And so I've already written pieces where we've relied on some reporting from reporters that work for the Morning Post there.
Interesting.
Because China is such a huge topic, and so I would imagine that that's a partnership that's going to bear good fruit going forward, and already has.
Tell everybody as we wrap up, because I think it's kind of a cool story. Not to get all crazy or mushy or anything, but you're a good story. We just made each other, but you're an interesting story that has turned a career into something that you thought was cool and that you really loved. And I always tell people when I'm talking to them all the time, especially younger people, if you love what you do, it's never a job. I know it's cliche, but it's true. If you love what you do, it's never a job. And I'm always like, hey, if you love doing something, pretty much, I could figure out in front of you, it would take me 5 minutes to figure out how you could take that love and turn it into some kind of career where you could pay bills. Where you could pay bills and go on vacation and have a great life.
And it's so much easier just to wake up in the morning when you know that this is what you're born to do, at least for now, and that it's something that you're providing a public service, and it's exciting, and it's interesting to interview people all day long and then try to knit together articles or scoops and help your colleagues with what they're working on to inform the general public about the vital issues of the day. And so for me, it doesn't feel like a job. It's more of a calling.
When did you start with the newspaper articles? How old were you?
So I was maybe 13 or 14.
All right. So you guys hear that out there? 13 or 14 in newspaper articles, finding incorrect stuff. Now look at them.
But now I started reading newspapers when I was 10. As soon as I could read, I was devouring them as much as I could. I started with my local paper in the Berkshires, the Berkshire Eagle and then the Berkshire Record, and so they also hired me on as an intern to proofread their pages.
That's awesome.
That's what I did for a couple of summers.
You're like a walking Snopes. We call it a Lippman.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we can go with that.
Yeah. And today on the show, we had a walking Snopes. I want to thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. I think my audience will really enjoy this as well. And we're going to wrap up another episode of the Big Joel Show. This is Daniel Lippman of Politico. You could just Google him. You can go on the Politico website. It's just Politico.com, right? It's Politico.com. You can look up his articles, blogs. You're all over the map, right? What were you talking about this morning in BBC? Mueller
and Trump, and I have CNN.
Shocking.
CNN and MSNBC this weekend. So.
Yeah, about that? All about that?
They haven't told me their topics yet.
Yeah, but you have a sneaking suspicion.
Whatever the news of the day will be.
Yeah.
And whatever I'm working on.
Exactly. Okay, well, thank you very much. Again, this wraps up another episode of the Big Joel Show. This was a really cool one. I hope you like it. Again, we're available any place that you consume podcasts, and Facebook, YouTube, of course, and all the other 6 or 7 other places. Please go on there and give us a like and tell us what you thought of the show. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.